Good morning, people. I thought I would try and help some of you people out there. As you can see, I'm still in bed. This is my morning. This is my morning routine, and I'm going to explain to you first. In 2009, I moved from my old house to this house. When I did, I lifted a heavy box, and it was a real big, heavy box. When I did that up in my shoulders here, I heard something go, and it sounded almost like what it would sound like when a lion bites into a piece of meat near the bone. You know, that crunch it makes? Without it being a bone crunch, it's just like a crunch. And it happened in both my shoulders. My right shoulder was worse. It got to where I couldn't lift my arm any further than this. I couldn't move it any further than this. I couldn't put it behind my back any further than this. I went to the doctor. They did x-rays. They did MRIs. They found a small tear in the muscle up there. They sent me to therapy, and therapy had me pulling on things, and therapy had me lifting on things, and it was getting worse. And I kept on telling the doctors it was getting worse, and they wouldn't listen to me. So I finally got fed up enough. I came home, and I typed in, what would make it so you can't lift your arm because it causes too much pain? And a thing called frozen shoulder syndrome came back. It's not widely understood why it happens, because sometimes it happens to people who don't get an injury to their arm. Sometimes it happens to people who get injuries to their arms years and years before, and they don't understand why. It just happens. They may have been yanked as a little kid and never had a problem with it until they got into their 50s, their 40s and 50s. And then one day they went to pull on something, and their arms went like this, and the pain went through their arm, that it went all the way through their chest, and it just sent them to the floor crying. And they couldn't find relief. They would go to a doctor, and a doctor would have them pull these rubber bands, and pull these rubber bands, and lift these weights, and lift these weights, and lift the arm, and lift the arm, and nothing ever got better. In my research, this is what I found, and I have to do this every morning. If I don't do it every morning and I leave it go for too long, the symptoms will come back. You have to do it every morning. What you do is you put your arm down, and if you're coming up, you put your arm down and you hold it, and you take your other arm. You don't lift with this arm. You let this arm be what it wants to be right now. And what it wants to be right now is dead weight. You let it be that dead weight. You grab your arm, and you take your hand and you lift that arm. And at the beginning, all I could lift it was here. And that was because that made it uncomfortable. Not painful, just a little bit of a nag. And I held it there for 10 seconds. And then I'd bring it down. And if you have to do it the way I did it at the beginning, and take something and wrap around your arm and pull it up this way, then that's what you do. You just pull it up. If you have to take and grab your hand here to pull it up, just pull it up. And you let your other hand do the work. And you just hold it there 10 seconds, and then you put it down. and you let it rest for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And then you bring it back up and you hold it there 10 seconds. And each time you do that, you'll be holding it further and further and further up until you get to where you can put your hand back up above your head. Look at there. Now, I couldn't for years put it any higher than this without it feeling any pain at all. Not any higher than this. And then you do the same thing. You come up under your arm here. You hang on, you lift your arm, and then you start pulling forward. And you do it the same way as when you were raising your arm, to the point where it's uncomfortable. See, for me right now, after all this time of doing this, now that was 2009. It's only been a few years that I've been able to do this. Look at how far I can get my arm. And you hold it for 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you bring it down and you let it set for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And you do it this way as well, because there's a difference between moving it this way and moving it this way. You've got to do it both ways, because there is a difference in how the bone in here and the muscles rotate. And then when I first started, I had to grab my blanket like this and then start turning and hold myself like this to where it was uncomfortable, until you can get to where you can do this again. Look at there. I can put my arm all the way behind my back, and just like when I was younger, it can go all the way to the other side of my body. Look, it's normal. Now, back in 2009, you wouldn't have ever thought my arm was normal, because it wouldn't have gone too far. And I've got to do this every morning, and I'll have to do it every morning for the rest of my life to keep those muscles pulled properly. Because when I first started doing that, I thought, oh, my arm is better. I don't have to do it anymore. And then for a few months, I didn't do it. And then I started noticing when I came up to here, I started getting sore again. When I lifted my arm up this far, I started getting sore again. And I knew at that point that now I've got a problem with this shoulder. And it's in this shoulder, but not as bad. But I've got a problem with this shoulder. And this shoulder has to have more attention than any other part of my body. Every morning. And I do it every night before I go to bed. That way when I wake up in the morning, it's not as sore. But every morning, you've got to do your exercises if you've got frozen shoulder syndrome. I can pull on things and have my arm do this now. Does it hurt a little bit? Yes, but nothing like it did before. I mean, it was so bad before. I was in the store one day. I was looking at something and my arm got jerked for some reason, and I ended up screaming down in the middle of Walmart store, screaming and crying because the pain was so bad, curled up in a ball, just crying because the pain was so bad. And now look at me. Look at me. I'm able to move my arms the way I'm supposed to be able to move my arms. The way God created my arms to be moved. Because I do this exercise every morning. If you have frozen shoulder syndrome, if you've had an injury to your shoulders in the past, whether you remember that injury or not, and you've gone to the doctor over and over and over and over again, and nothing was ever done about it that really worked, I encourage you to at least try this. If you've got a partner, I don't, so I had to do it on my own. If you've got a partner, it'd be best to have them help you. Then that way you can lay down on your side and they can manipulate your arm. Just tell them that when they lift it, when it gets to the point, not where it hurts, but where it aches. It's just at that point of ache. You tell them slowly lift your arm until it gets to the point where it aches. And to hold it there for 10 seconds. And they do that 10 times every morning. And if you want it to be better for the next morning, every night when you go to bed, before you even get out of your bed, that is the first thing you do. And it's the last thing you do at night. And you will get, hopefully, if it works right, to the point where you can do what I am doing. Now, if you've got frozen shoulder syndrome, and I know somebody out there who has it, and his name is Lester Morrow. If you've got frozen shoulder syndrome, and you can't do this, or you can't do this, and there's also Papa Morrow, and you can't do this. Excuse me. Then maybe it's worth the try. Maybe it's worth the try to be able to get your arm to where you can do that. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, people. It's worth the try. Ask yourself, what are you going to lose? I can lift up weights, not heavy weights now, but I don't have the lifting power I had before I had my injury. I will probably never have that lifting power. I can't stand and hold something more than a gallon in this arm, in this position, more than a few minutes without it making my arm useless. But I can at least do normal functions now. I can hold on to a steering wheel if I have to, for as long as I have to. I can reach out and grab something if I need to. I can reach above my head and grab something if I need to. I can reach out in front of me if I need to. I can reach behind my back and give myself an itch if I need to. And when you live alone, being able to reach behind your back and give yourself an itch, I can reach around here and itch. Now just imagine if I had an itch right here, which I did for months. I had an itch right here that I could not get rid of because I couldn't bring my arm any further than here. And everything I'd back up to scratch just did not do the same as what my fingernails did. That itch just irritated me. And it wasn't until I was able to do this that I was finally able to get rid of that itch. So ask yourself, is itching that spot worth giving some passive therapy a chance? That's what it's called. It's called passive therapy. Aggressive therapy is when you're lifting the weights, is when you're pulling on the bands the way they wanted me to. My arm didn't need that. It needed the passive. So think about it. What is it your arm needs if you're dealing with frozen shoulder syndrome? What are you willing to do to get the movement back to your arm? And do you have a partner that can help you that would make it even better? I did this all on my own. If I can do it on my own, you can do it with a partner. So remember, there's never anything that's totally hopeless. You just got to give it the chance. And you got to listen to your body. And if your body's telling you what the therapist is doing is wrong, dump the therapist and figure out what is right. Because not all doctors are right. But all doctors think they are more right than what you are. They think they live in your body. My doctors don't live in my body. Because of how I have been treated with doctors, because of how I was dismissed by doctors as to what I was saying, I would tell them, this is not making it better, it's making it worse. Oh, it'll make it worse at first. No, it won't. Later on, found out those therapists got in trouble because they were doing exercises with people they weren't supposed to be doing. They ended up in trouble because they weren't doing their therapy right and they weren't listening to their patients. You are a practicing doctor. When you're practicing something, you are never, ever a person who is a genius at it. You are always learning. Learn from your patients, doctors. And if you've got a patient with frozen shoulder syndrome, listen to them. Hear them when they tell you that this is not getting better. And change your approach. Because if you're not into medicine to make a patient better, then you shouldn't be in medicine at all. So, hopefully, this helps some of you out there who are going through what I went through. Hopefully, some of you at some point in time will be able to once again lift your arm above your head. Like I can. Because sometimes you just need to raise that arm.